Welcome back to Practical Parenting, the podcast that helps empower parents in the trenches find joy in the process and thrive through it all. I'm Christina Wales here with my co-host, Dr. Terry Nguyen, Chair of Pediatrics at GBMC Healthcare. So kids are about to go back to school, and for some, that's super awesome. I remember being so excited to shop for school supplies and get my clean notebooks and write the date on top. But, for me, like, September comes around and I still get excited about, like, starting new things, new adventures, all that kind of stuff. But for some kids, school comes with a lot of anxiety, and the transition to school and a schedule after a summer of like sort of more carefree time can really feel overwhelming. So let's talk today about school refusal or school avoidance, which can vary a lot. It can be triggered by going back to school, something that happened during the school year. It can also range in severity. So the first step we talked about for parents would be to identify the underlying cause of the anxiety. So this will determine sort of how you can approach it. So do you want to talk first about maybe some common underlying causes?
Yeah. So I was also of the same thought as you. I got really excited. I didn't have a lot of activities during the summer. I read way too many books and was in my head too much. So I was ready to go back to school. But yeah, there are quite a few children out there who are really anxious about school starting. Well, really, for some children, any transition can be a challenge, right? So it was the free life of summer, and there was just play, not very many rules and regulations. So that's difficult. Getting back on a sleep schedule is difficult. And then for some children, if you have generalized anxiety disorder, that's it, a transition. You catastrophize what's the worst thing that could happen. You worry about everything that could possibly go wrong. Am I going to wear the right clothes? Am I going to be laughed at? Am I going to not pick the right backpack, the right lunch bag, right? And then, and the worries grow as you get older because you're so much more worried about how your peers are judging you. You're judging yourself already, and now your peers are judging you, and then you're going to judge your circumstance. That's it. So if you have generalized anxiety disorder, yes, restarting school would cause some anxiety. Maybe you have social anxiety, right? It always takes you a little bit of time to get acclimated to the school year and make friends. And what if your friends aren't in your class this year?
Especially the middle school. I feel like that's probably going a big one.
Or who am I going to sit with at lunchtime, right? Those are real worries, real fears. And if you have any of those, there you go. What if last year you were bullied by some kids? That would be a reason to be really anxious about returning to school and returning to a similar environment.
Or even during the school year, right now they're going back to school, but, if your kids start, something changes mid-year, it could be, trouble with friends, bullies, maybe even trouble with like a teacher or a subject or, struggles with the work itself.
Yeah, and the struggle with the work. Now, maybe you have a child who hasn't been diagnosed with their learning difficulty or learning disability yet. And but the child knows that they're not always catching on at school. And school has been a struggle. Those kids will probably have some somatic symptoms even before school even starts. There's headaches now the week or two before. There's tummy aches, because just even thinking about this, this academic expectation, this academic performance thing is already kind of working them over, right? So all those things could be different reasons for school avoidance. The key is kind of figuring out where does your child fit in all of this, and then going forward with it. And then there's always family history, okay? So let's not forget. I mean, children are the mirrors of ourselves. So luckily, you and I really enjoyed going back to school. I think my children were really cool about going to school. I don't know. The parents who may have generalized anxiety disorder or social anxiety or depression, I don't know how their kids are feeling when school restarts also. Okay?
Or even triggering events at home can lead to that, before or during the school year. Can make it hard for them to want to go back. Yeah, and I think, so yes, understanding and diagnosing sort of the underlying cause of the anxiety is probably the first step. But, this new generation of parents, we're trying to do things differently. We really want to recognize kids' feelings and emotions and like let them sort of have that autonomy and sort of recognize them as their own people. So I think for something like this, I feel like it can get pretty tricky because we want to be able to validate their emotions and understand their perspective and honor the feelings that they're having about whatever's going on. But we also need them to go to school. So how do you balance that sort of, respecting how they're feeling, but also maybe pushing them a little bit to like step outside of how they're or help them work through, I guess.
Yeah. So I love that you said hesitantly, you said kind of pushing them. We don't want to push our kids in any way, right? And I know you didn't mean that, but
that's the generational. I got to think of a better term.
So how do we pull our children along with us is really the better image, right? Because if there's any image of having to push, and I think you were, lacking the right word for it. So, and I go through that. So this is not a, pick at Christina thing at all. Instead of pushing against something that is that's difficult or a challenge for you or your child, and because when you continue butting heads, nothing productive grows of it, right? It's just going to blow up. So how can you pull them along on this? How can you kind of ease them into it and persuade them this is originating from them and it's a desire that they have, okay? So
I think that permissive parenting would just oh yes, I understand it's so hard. Like, let's homeschool instead, or you can stay home for today, and then that bleeds into the next day and the next day and the next day, and it's sort of a snowball you can't stop going towards. So we want to be firm and say it's hard, but let's work through it together.
Yeah, and I think. I love that analogy. The world is not black or white. We're all aiming to live in the gray zone. And this comes to that as well. Like, yes, if we as parents are really inflexible, you've got to go to school. I don't care how much this is hurting, that's hurting, you're going to school. That's not going to go down really well because then you're forcing the child to go to school and it's really out of fear that they're going because it's the external motivator, right? If you're a little too loosey-goosey, oh, you don't feel like going? Okay. You don't have to. At some point, they do have to go to school.
Right.
So that's the avoidance, right? A short-term avoidance for a bigger-term problem as things grow and you keep avoiding. And how do you get over something that you're fearful of? It's by being exposed to it, right? If you have, let's say, if you're anxious about spiders, how do you get over your agoraphobia? It's to be exposed to them, but in incremental doses. You do it, that's what we do in exposure therapy, is small doses, smaller, and then you continually grow bigger and bigger until it's the full exposure to the spider right in front of you. So it's the same thing with school. First, we want to find out kind of what's behind it, okay? What kind of feelings is it bringing up for them, and where are they going with those feelings? Are they catastrophizing worst-case scenarios? Are they losing sleep over it? They're having nightmares. Okay, so got to get that sleep in order. But then also, you're not alone in this. So as far as school, what is it about school that your child might be avoiding? What is it, that they're seeking comfort from you? Are they getting any secondary gains? If I stay home and I get to watch video games and cartoons all day, well, shoot, I'm going to stay home. But if I stay home and I'm still going to do homework and, have activities to be done just as if I was in school, the only difference is I'm not in school, it's less enticing, right? And am I getting some other secondary benefit, like you're getting attention from a parent who doesn't have a lot of time for me? Then I have to feign illness and avoid school because then I'll get the parental attention that day. Like, Johnny, are you okay? Can I get you this? Can I get you that? So you want to look into that. But then, more important, you want to bring in the school, too, to help you out. You may talk to your child's teachers or the school guidance counselor, what did you see last year or what has happened recently in the classroom that, your son or your daughter is like scared now of school. And then, so school avoidance, separation anxiety is a big thing early on, right? For children between 5 and 7, that's the big thing for separation anxiety is a big reason for their school avoidance, right? You can see the 4 or 5-year-old like just not being able to let go of mom or dad's, pants or skirt. You're like, that's because they are fearful of leaving you. They're worried bad things are going to happen to you when they're not with you. Okay, so.
Same, kid.
What?
I said same. I'm worried about things happening to my kid when I'm not with them.
Okay, well, you have some separation anxiety about your children.
Okay, so tell me what I should do.
So, for that, you're just going to have the quick goodbye, okay?
Yeah.
There's no such thing as we're going to go to school and, you're going to sit in the classroom for a while and then leave. For that, because those kids are actually fine. Once the parent is gone and they've been handed over to the teacher, they're fine.
I feel like I've heard a lot of kindergarten teachers agree and just say, just leave.
Right.
We got it. We know how to handle it.
Exactly.
Type of thing.
So if it's that separation anxiety, it's totally legit to say, talk to the teacher in advance. I'm going to drop off my child and I'm going to run out of there, okay? And you can say your goodbyes in the car. But no, please, no prolonged goodbyes, as you're leaving the child off with the teacher. Because that's only going to prolong the agony, right? Your child is going to like pull and tug at you some more.
Well, and then I feel like when you stay, you sort of reinforce that feeling that they have. It's like, you're not leaving, so something must be wrong that you feel like you have to stay here with me, rather than just saying, no, you got this, you're with your teacher, I'll see you later. And then you're there later.
Say that. You don't even have to say that, love you, go, okay? So that's separation anxiety.
I heard this one therapist give an example, which I liked. It was not Dr. Becky, by the way.
I have nothing. I love Dr. Becky. I use I use her most generous interpretation almost every day.
So there was another one who his own daughter was struggling with going to preschool, and they would go early. They would sit outside the school and they would watch everybody go inside. And they would just talk about like, oh, here goes that person going inside. Doesn't she have a pretty backpack? And they would she would sit with her and just comment. And then after everybody went inside the school, then she would go in. And, she was explaining it was around COVID time, so she couldn't go in with her. That was another layer to the, to it. But I loved that she, she sat with her, supported her through that, had that time. And then she just was like, okay, now it's your turn and I'll see you later, whatever. But it was that intentional plan of this is what we're going to do. We're going to sit outside, then you're going to walk in. And I think she said it took until March for her daughter to just walk in on her own. But it was that,
that gradual. It's the graduation. Remember, it's all about taking small steps and then taking a bigger step the next, it's a graded, that's it. It's gradation, right? So the first thing to overcome avoidance is to make the first step. And then you incrementally increase the steps, the size of the steps, And for some kids, that may work, okay? But for some other children, you may really it's like ripping the Band-Aid off, okay? The fear is about taking the Band-Aid off. But once you've ripped off the Band-Aid, you're like, fine. And that's the same thing for the kids who have separation anxiety. It's not that they're fearful of school. They actually really like school. They like their friends. They like their teacher. It's just the physical acts. What they're fearing is that goodbye part. So let's minimize the part that they actually really fear, okay? It's that physical separation, so let's make that quick. So, God bless that psychologist that you listened to. I was like, wow, until March. But, what works for one child doesn't always work for another child. So I really praise that psychologist. She knew her kid, and she knew that it was going to be drawn out and that she was going to have to take a graduated, really pulled out process. But her kid got there, okay? So you also have to know your kid. I can't give absolute generalizations. I bet you there are some kids that rip off the Band-Aid technique just terrifies them, and they'll never leave the house and never get into the car, okay? Or the other thing is always, if you have the option of having two parents to choose from or two caretakers to choose from on who's taking the child, really, there's probably one parent that the child gravitates to more drama with versus the other parent. So if possible, pick the parent that triggers less drama and have that parent drop them off at school. I'll just give a solid example. When my kids were younger, I really wanted to split bedtime with my husband. He would do one child, I would do the other, and then we'd swap. What we learned was it really didn't work. And for one of our children, really, if dad put that child to sleep, that child actually went to sleep. If I tried to put that child to sleep, well, we sort of went to sleep. But as soon as I left, the child was up. And then, and there was a lot of tug and war. So remember, how can I help pull my child along rather than push against them, right? And just knowing their personality, it's trial and error. There's no absolute. And again, for you, remember, whatever you are feeling inside, you are mirroring out to your child. They absorb that energy.
Yeah.
So if you're fearful about your child's first day of kindergarten, guess what? They're going to sense it. They're going to be a little fearful of leaving you on the first day of kindergarten as well.
Yeah.
But where you're like, this is great, and and you're really pumping them up and getting them excited about it, it's excitement. It's the same, and we've talked about this before, right? The feelings that you get are similar whether it is from fear or excitement. So it's about how you are going to portray it for your child. So I always choose the excitement. And make the first day, an exciting, fun thing. Take the picture so you can track it through the years, You might develop a family tradition like every school year on the first day of school, this is what we do. Or there's a special ritual that you do on the morning of the first day of school. So it's something that you get excited for, just similar to waiting for Santa at Christmas, right? The ritual of putting out the cookies, hanging up your stockings, right? So now let's do a routine that your kids could look forward to for going to school.
So last year when my oldest started kindergarten, we practiced. So like the week of or the week before she went to school, we started practicing getting up in the morning, getting ready, and then one of the days or a couple of the days we actually drove to school just to see like, oh, we got here on time, whatever, and then drove to like get donuts instead.
Yeah.
So something like that is, it's good practice, and so they reduced anxiety, so they know what to do, what to expect, where they're going, that sort of thing. But you're also making it a little fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So I liked what you said about not giving sort of blanket advice because every child is so different. Yeah. So I wanted to bring up, we found Christopher Kearney, the chair of psychology at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He's a director of the UNLV Child School Refusal and Anxiety Disorders Clinic. So perfect for our discussion today. He came up with 4 questions to ask to help you create a plan for addressing school anxiety. And so I think this will help, parents, if you ask the question and what your own answers are, will help you create something to kind of figure out how you want to approach it. So what are they seeking relief from? You mentioned some of these, I think, earlier. What are they avoiding? What are they gaining? And what are the benefits? So, you can talk about those a little bit more, but I think those give sort of a framework for addressing that underlying cause and then trying to figure out how to move forward from there.
Absolutely. So what are they avoiding? What kind of negative internal feelings are they having related to school? In the younger children where separation anxiety is at the top of the list, right? It could be, and then escaping something from school, avoiding unpleasant experiences at school, whether it is school academic related or socially related. So academics, your child might have a learning disorder, may have ADHD and can't focus. So school is really challenging for them. So yeah, I'd want to avoid school, or maybe they're being bullied, or they're being excluded. What fun is it going to school? That's more likely in the older kids. And is it generalized anxiety? Is it social anxiety? Is there depression? Like what's behind it, right? That's where we need to really dig in there. And then, the question about what are they gaining from it. I said that a little bit earlier. The kids who might have high prevalence of separation anxiety from their parents, or kids who feel like they get more attention when they're home from, they're home from school. You're a busy parent, but oh well, you're not going to work today, and you have to attend to the child. So, is there are they getting more attention? Are they getting secondary benefits from it? And so, just like I said before, if your child is going to stay home from school, it's going to be a really boring day. We're not staying in bed all day, okay? We're going to do schoolwork, and you're going to check in with the teacher and see what assignments, and they're going to be sitting and doing that. There's going to be no electronics, no TV, no video games, because that's too easy. I mean, if that's what I get to do instead of going to school, why would I pick going to school, right? And then those really are the biggies. And then I also always want to pull back and say, remember, engage the school, meaning the teachers and the counselors and the principal, whoever's at school, to help you as well, to give you clues as to what it is that might be kind of contributing to your child's school avoidance. And then, also what's the family history? If you're anxious about, let's say this is a transition year and it's not even the transition to kindergarten. Maybe it's a transition to middle school or high school. If you're anxious about it, your adolescent, young adult is also going to sense it, all right? And the beautiful thing about kids is they take one thing and they really run with it and they make it the biggest thing. So if you have a little bit of fear about it for them, and they sense it, right, it grows and grows for them. So you kind of check in with yourself first, and then you can help your child. And know that children who avoid school, there's a pretty good correlation with parents having mental health disorders as well. A good 75% of kids who are school avoidant, mother may have anxiety, and about 50% mother may have depression. Okay. And the numbers, they aren't as high for the fathers, but they mirror in that, it's a high prevalence of anxiety and depression in the fathers of those children as well. So, I don't always like these idioms, but you always have to kind of turn the mirror back on yourself and see, are some of your worries and fears being reflected and mirrored to your children? Because those mirror neurons in your brain, they're really smart. And for the kids, like, they pick up the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. So it's wonderful to have all those neurons firing, and then maybe it's a little too extreme sometimes. They know it before you even recognize it in yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and one last thing I'll say too is, and I don't know, maybe you won't agree with me on this, but I do feel like for some kids and families, traditional school might not be. So I just want to put it out there, like, we're going through all of this, like, do your due diligence with these things, working through the school avoidance. But if it is a major problem, or, you're dealing with something else, like, maybe it is not right for your family and you should figure out some alternative options. So I don't want to lay it out as just like, you really need to figure out a way to have your kid go to school. It might just not be for you, but try these first and see, if you can overcome that.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Like I said, I never think that you can generalize. There's, generally you can say, like, for 95% of the population, this will be true. But then there's going to be that small 1 to 5% that doesn't fit in some kind of mold or category that you're trying to put them in. And really, the person who knows it best is, I always want to give it back to the parents. The parents really do know their children best, right? But don't let your fear preempt what you'll try out for your children. So remember, you have to check in on your fears as well. Like, what's driving my worry about this? Like, what's at the root of it? Am I worried that there's something up with my kid? Am I worried that my child has some learning issues? Am I worried that my child may be on the autism spectrum and they don't connect socially well with others? I don't know. But so it's like you have to listen. So if you feel that anxiety coming on for yourself, you also have to spend some moments kind of reflecting and processing what's behind it. Because I bet you if you knew what was behind it, you'd also have a good idea of which is the more wise path for your child. And also always remember, just because you made this decision this year with your child and it doesn't go as planned, or it may go even better, or it's like, oh, it was a big flop, you can always change paths.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in elementary school for 5 to 6 years. Nobody remembers their grades from then, It's really about learning to learn and learning to love to learn. And we all forget that. Like, if there's no joy in it for the kid, whether it's being homeschooled or being schooled at school, the kid's not going to want to learn.
Yeah.
No matter what the environment is, right?
Right.
So make sure there's some moments of joy in it every day for them, something that they're looking forward to. And if they're really dreading something, you have to pay attention. Kids don't lie. That's what I love, right? They don't fake it. Like, they're not faking a stomach ache when they have a tummy ache that's related to anxiety. They really do have the tummy pains. But
they just might be interpreting butterflies as...
Right. Okay. It's somatic. They feel it, but there's not an organic cause like there's constipation or an appendicitis, but their stomach really doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So I want to remind parents, we don't want to minimize our kids, minimize or invalidate what they're feeling or they're thinking. It's just that we have to help them fine-tune what is it that they're trying to communicate with the symptom or the feeling or whatever it is that they're expressing.
Yeah. Great advice. All right. Well, we hope that you have a smooth transition into school after this, listening to this podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yes. Okay. Happy new school year, everyone.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
See ya.
Get your kids to bed.